That's amateur video coming out of Syria today, purported to show government airstrikes targeting the Syrian people. An estimated 30,000 people have been killed since the war there began. It's basically a civil war now, nearly 2 years ago. And while the growing questions over Libya are grabbing most of the media attention these days, my next guest says there is a much bigger scandal in Syria in the form of an alleged weapons pipeline to Al-Qaeda that we are providing. Here to explain, Washington Post columnist Mark Thiessen. He's a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush and a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. So I just want to be clear. Focus now on Syria. Bashar Assad is massacring his own people and has been doing it for almost 2 years now. Vice President Biden gets asked about this at the vice presidential debate because there's been a lot of criticism about how we, the world superpower, is sitting back and doing relatively nothing as little babies are literally being executed, murdered. Little kids are being tortured, and we've done almost nothing. He gets asked about it, and this is what he said in part. Stand by.
We are working hand and glove with the Turks, with the Jordanians, with the Saudis, and with all the people in the region, attempting to identify the people who deserve the help so that when Assad goes, and he will go, there will be a legitimate government that follows on, not an al-Qaeda-sponsored government that follows on.
And you say that was blatantly untrue, and you claim the New York Times backs you up. Explain.
That's exactly right. What has happened is, as was revealed yesterday in the New York Times, is that the Obama administration has participated in the creation of an arms pipeline to Al-Qaeda in Syria. It's sort of they didn't call it this, but it's basically a fast and furious program that is running Saudi and Qatari weapons to our terrorist enemies in the Middle East. And Joe Biden lied about it in the debate. This is what the New York Times reported, quote, "Most of the arms shipped at the behest of Saudi Arabia and Qatar to supply Syrian rebel groups are going to hard-line Islamic jihadists." They quoted an American official saying, "The opposition groups that are receiving the most of the lethal aid are exactly the ones we don't want to have it." And most importantly, they write, quote, "President Obama and other senior officials are aware of the diversions from classified assessments of the Syrian conflict." So what that means is that this program, which was designed to help the Syrian rebels, the good elements of the Syrian rebels, has gone completely awry. The weapons are going to Al-Qaeda and its allies in Syria, and the Obama administration knew that this was the case. Joe Biden went out in the debate and said exactly the opposite, not just once, but twice during the vice presidential debate.
Why would he do that? I mean, now I've read the New York Times article, and everybody can read it. It's called
Sure.
Rebel Arms Flow is said to benefit jihadists in Syria. Here it is right here, and it's dated October 14th, 2012. All right, so you can read it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It says exactly what Mark just says it says. And it does seem to contradict Vice President Biden's claims that, quote, we're helping the people who deserve the help so that we'll have a legitimate government later after Assad is gone, not an al-Qaeda-sponsored one. And the New York Times is saying we're helping exactly the people we don't want to be helping over there. How? How does this happen?
Well, because they don't want another scandal. Look, this lie that Joe Biden told makes Susan Rice's claims that the Benghazi attack was about a YouTube video pale by comparison. There is a fast and furious program in Syria that is arming Al-Qaeda with weapons that they may one day use against American troops. And so Joe Biden was questioned about Syria. He told an untruth about it. And then Paul Ryan actually challenged him on it, said that we've let Al-Qaeda get a foothold, and he doubled down. He said, no, we are working with the Saudis, and we are making sure that this stuff doesn't get to the wrong people, that it's going. Yeah.
We have that soundbite. So Paul Ryan challenged him on it, and listen to what he said.
And for months in making sure that help, humanitarian aid, as well as other aid and training is getting to those forces that we believe, the Turks believe, the Jordanians believe, the Saudis believe are the free forces inside of Syria. That is underway.
The free forces inside of Syria.
What's underway is that, according to the New York Times, that the weapons are going to, quote, and this is the New York Times' quote, hardline Islamic jihadists, quote. And it was the New York Times, not me, the New York Times that said President Obama and senior officials are aware of the diversions because they've been briefed on the classified intelligence assessments. Now, Joe Biden is Obama's point man on the Middle East. It is beyond belief that he would not be aware of these assessments. So
But Mark, let me jump in. What he may have been trying to say is, look, we've got this program by which we are attempting to help the good guys to the extent we can identify them in Syria. Well, the New York Times seems to be reporting that our efforts are facing some difficulty. We don't ship this stuff directly to them. We use our allies, and our allies are not that reliable, as it turns out.
But what he said was, left a clear impression, the way he phrased it, that we are doing this, that there's a program underway, we're working with our allies, we're shipping these weapons to the right people, and quite frankly, that would be the right thing to do. I mean, this is what we're seeing here is the consequence of leading behind, which most Americans consider following. Okay, that if we want to help, we have an interest in making sure that when Assad falls, that it's not an al-Qaeda government comes into power. But instead of doing it ourselves, instead of identifying the right people that share our values and going and making sure they're the ones who get the weapons, we've subcontracted our policy to countries like Saudi Arabia, who have a record of giving arms and support to Islamic radicals. And so this is a consequence of leading from behind. And they've just been caught in a major, major arms scandal. And Vice President Biden looked the American people in the eye on that television camera, not once, but twice, and said it wasn't happening. The New York Times says it is.
Just so our viewers know, and the New York Times article points this out, Governor Romney gave a speech in which he also talked about providing some help to the folks that we believe are innocent in Syria. He stopped short of saying that we would do it directly. And his aides later said that he would instead rely on Arab allies to do it. That would leave us in the same predicament that we are now in, according to this article. So, using these allies who apparently cannot be relied upon. We will see if this comes up tonight. It's intricate. It's tough to understand. We'll see whether one of the questioners get to it. But Syria becoming more important. Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Coming up next, a top